Today, I want to talk about a crop that I probably should have devoted a video to a long time ago. And I'm talking about the black turtle bean. The black turtle bean is a crop that usually comes to my mind even in the wintertime, as it's currently snowing right now. But usually during this wintertime, I will be finishing up shelling a bunch of these dry beans like the black turtle beans, right? And I'll be saving certain ones for seed, and others that I save for eating purposes, I will be using for food purposes during the wintertime. So gardening can really be all year, even if you're not in the tropics. Black turtle bean specifically goes back about 7,000 years, right? And even agriculture itself goes back 10,000 years. So the domestication and the cultivation of the black turtle bean starts only a few thousand years into the advent of ag. And it makes sense because beans are such a high protein, nutrient dense food, and they can give, and they have given a lot of communities, a lot of societies over generations, over thousands of years, right? The energy and the nutrients to sustain their cultures. So this type of bean is one of my primary beans that I grow. It's the black turtle bean, the kidney bean is another one, and then of course green beans. Those are the three main ones that I have grown. This plant is a small bush type plant, which is really cool because you can grow it in areas and it doesn't have to take up a whole lot of space, right? And you don't have to set up a whole big trellis system, right? So these can be a very compatible plant to grow with a bunch of different other crops too, right? They can be grown in more of like an understory. They don't have a huge nutrient demand because they can they can get some more of their own nitrogen from forming symbiotic relationships with different soil bacteria like rhizobia. And this is of course a black bean type, as evidenced by the name. And the beans will actually like bleed a purplish color into like water if they're soaked in water like before cooking, and that's probably due to the presence of anthocyanins in the seed coat, I would think. These plants are really easy to grow. They've got pretty sizably, large seeds, easy to handle and plant. Like I said, these plants aren't super demanding of exceptional fertility or anything like that. And overall, this can be a really great storage crop, right? It's a great way that you can grow, harvest, and store a lot of extra protein and nutrients for over the winter time, right? The dry beans store well and keep very well as long as you keep them in a reasonably dry environment. Now, there are some considerations that we want to make. Primarily, we want to talk about maybe some animals that may try to consume the bean plants, right? Whether it's the sprouts themselves, the leaves, the developing beans, or even the mature beans in some cases, right? I have had rabbits and some other rodents go after these bean plants in all of these various stages. Typically, it's going to be around the time when they're first sprouting up, and then again when they are bearing or beginning to bear mature seeds. Sometimes the seed pods can get destroyed and the beans eaten out of them. So that's one thing to be aware of. And then of course deer, as always, can be a challenge to contend with, although I usually oftentimes forget to include deer on my normal list of crops that they can attack, because I have some pretty good fencing around my garden area, so deer haven't really been an issue for the last 5 or 6 years, right? So it's good to make sure that we are growing these bean crops in relatively open areas that would expose these would-be pests to potential predators, right? So not a whole lot of overhanging branches, not a whole lot of weed pressure. And then the other thing is too, sometimes during the summertime, the bean plants can get a little bit of heat stress, right? Sometimes it can get a little too hot, and then the plants will begin to fold up their leaves and probably go into photorespiration. So it is good to have actually some shade available, especially during the hot part of the day. And especially if it's been relatively dry as well, as long as the bean plants are getting good consistent water. And like I said, they can be grown as somewhat of a understory crop to like sorghum or tomatoes, etc., etc. And sometimes even just that little bit of shade can help, right? Even in my garden, I have incrementally sumac, staghorn sumac, in the rows. So that gives like little patches of shade that can move across the landscape throughout the day to kind of help shade out certain crops, right, and help them to recuperate from any potential heat stress. Now, of course, I do have to keep the sumac pruned, and I'm able to harvest a bunch of biomass off of that. And then, of course, the sumac root suckers, that is something you have to keep up with too. Alright, so here we have the black turtle bean right back here. These are beginning to turn that tannish brown color. The beans also have some anthocyanins, and that can kind of tinge the pod a little bit of a light purple in certain areas around the edges and the ends. But it's becoming dry, and so this is when you want to collect it, when the pod is mostly dry. It's a light tan color, so, and it's before any kind of rain. So, you know, the black turtle beans, it's just something that's it's just something that you're gonna have to go through the patch every few days or so once the beans pods begin to dry, and just harvest the ones that are ready. Even if they're a little, like, not quite ready yet, you can harvest them a little earlier and they will dry, but you don't want to harvest them too early, because then the beans won't be fully mature. So here's an example of one that's not quite ready. It's kind of a little bit more purplish. Got some purplish streaks on it. It feels a little bit more damp, whereas these two, a little bit more tan in color. Drier to the touch. These two guys are ready to pick. So we have collected a pretty fair number of beans. There are definitely more out here to pick, but I'm just going to take a quick break from this, and I want to talk about this bean plant right here. So we can see that this particular bean plant is still in a kind of a younger stage of growth, and we can see some purple flowers on this black turtle bean plant. It's got the classical legume type flower structure. I like to nibble on these a little bit every now and then when I'm out here picking. They've got a nice, like, kind of green bean slash vanilla type flavor. Pretty good. So you can see here that this pod is not fully dry, not fully mature. The pod is still thick with moisture, and it's not fully brown yet. But it's probably like a few days away from getting to that point. However, the last few days we've had a bunch of rain, and I'm wondering if that's just caused the seeds to swell, either by the plant taking in too much moisture at once and then sending it into the seeds as they're finishing up developing, or if that's making somehow a nutrient imbalance in the plant, where the seeds are supposed to be beginning to desiccate and dry out, but with all the moisture maybe that process has been disrupted and the seeds are beginning to swell, and it's causing these pods to split, even though it's not dry, it's not mature. You know, the pod is still like, you know, flexible and not fully desiccated. It's not that papery shell yet. So anyway, at this point, I've chosen to just pick these when they're at this point anyway, and then I'll let them dry inside. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the black turtle bean. It is such a staple, nutrient-dense crop that can be grown in so many different climates, and for any backyard home garden or survival prepper garden or whatever, it can be such a foundational cornerstone in it, right? But what's important is that we know how to grow it, right? We know certain potential issues to look out for. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.